My name is Eldon McDonald. Everyone calls me Mac. Last time, I told you how I came home and found my beloved wife of 15 years in the arms of my best friend Steve. I found out that this had been going on for several years, and I had no idea. To make matters worse, I learned that my youngest son was not my biological child, but Steve's son. Without thinking twice, I reacted in the way I thought was most appropriate. I took disciplinary action against my best friend's place of higher learning. After my arrest and detention, I decided to engage in some self-reflection and investigation. That is where my story begins. Larry Cushman and I spent the next few days preparing legal documents and sorting through our financial records. The children were with Kelly and Paul, Jean was due to be discharged from the hospital, and I had to return to work. There was a lot to do in a short period of time. First, I needed to think everything through carefully. I spent several hours a day thinking and sorting through my feelings. I had been betrayed by the two most important people in my life. I felt anger, pain, and a tremendous sense of loss. I wanted a divorce. There was no question about that. My heart told me that I could no longer trust Jean. Steve the jerk was in the past. I wanted to be done with him once and for all. I had to think about the children. Diane reminded me that despite what had happened between us, I had to consider the children's interests in my decision. Diane, like many others, believes that you should stay married for the sake of the children. Others believe that it's better for children when parents try to save their marriage because they want to stay together for their sake. I believe that children should know that their parents will always love them no matter what. They are not to blame for our breakup. In my case, the children were old enough to understand the difference between love and games. Gradually, over time, I made my decision. It was time to talk to Stephen, Rachel, and Zachary and find out what they thought. I was so proud of our children and wasn't prepared for what they said. Rachel quickly figured out what was going on between her mother and Uncle Steve and had already discussed it with her brothers. To say they were hurt would be an understatement. They were furious with their mother. After talking to the kids, I had to change my plans. Kids know more than we give them credit for. The kids helped me move my things into the guest room. I couldn't bring myself to stay in our old bedroom, let alone sleep in the bed where my wife Jean had slept with my best friend Steve. The next day, I drove to the hospital to pick up Jean. Steve had to stay for another week. That gave Larry and me the time we needed. When I arrived, Jean snuggled up to me, waiting for a kiss. She clearly believed that since she was allowed to come home, she had been forgiven. No, I didn't kiss that girl. I thanked the nurses for taking care of her and wheeled her out to the car in a wheelchair. She got into the passenger seat, and I held the door open for her. Jean said goodbye and thanked everyone for taking care of her while she was in the hospital, and we drove home. We were alone for the first time in a week. "Mac, we need to talk about this sooner or later," she began. I turned onto K Street. "Yes, but not now. Wait until we get home and I'll explain everything." Jean turned in her seat. "So you're filing for divorce?" "I don't want you to do that." I looked at her irritably. "Are you hard of hearing? I said I'd explain everything when we got home." Jean bit her lower lip. I could see she was holding back tears. "Mac, I love you. I've loved you since the day we met. I interrupted her. "Jean, for the last time, shut the fuck up." But the bitch wouldn't listen. "Do the kids know? Do they hate me?" I took a deep breath. "Jean, shut the fuck up. Yes, they know their mother is a whore." The whore stopped talking and started crying. Finally, I pulled into the garage, got out with her small bag, and went into our townhouse. I didn't help her into the house. I told her the kids would be staying with Kelly and Paul for now. I took Jean's bag to the bedroom. I was putting the suitcase on the bed when she came in. "Mac, what happened to our wedding photo above the fireplace?" she asked, looking around the room. Without saying a word, I turned away from what I was doing and just looked at her. She nodded and said, "Is it in the basement?" No, that's the ashes you saw in the fireplace, I replied. Mac, that photo was priceless to us. It was the best photo from our wedding. I loved that photo, not to mention how much it cost Steve. I just turned around, looked at her, and said, "It's not worth a penny to me, and I don't care how much Steve paid for it. He's lucky I didn't shove it up his ass." She looked around with a puzzled expression on her face. "Mac, where's your alarm clock?" I turned and said, "All right, here's how it's going to be. First of all, this is your room." Jean started to speak. "Shut up and listen. I haven't slept in this room or this bed since I caught you sleeping with Steve," I barked. She lowered her eyes and nodded. I continued, "For the next few days, we'll live as usual. When Steve gets out of the hospital next week, we'll all get together for a little meeting." Jean shook her head. "No, I was a fool. I know he was your friend and that we did the wrong thing. I love you. I was stupid. But Steve pushed me, and I couldn't control myself. I don't want anything to do with Steve." "Well, that's too bad. You should have done something 10 years ago, shouldn't you?" "Yes, I know about Zachary." I had often read about it, but I never believed that color could disappear from a person's face. I was wrong. After that confession, Jean's face did indeed turn pale. "Mac, I don't know what to say." "Okay, don't say anything. Not until Steve gets here. In the meantime, I suggest you start making decisions about who you are and what you want out of life." I turned and left the room, hearing her sobbing. I won't go into all the tricks, pleas, and door slamming that followed over the next week. She quickly recovered and even expressed a desire to make up. I remember looking at her and shaking my head. I knew she believed that if she got me into bed, I would forgive her. The next day, she came back and playfully tried to kiss me on the neck. I pushed her away and told her to stay away from me. On Saturday, she used her most powerful weapon. She walked into the living room wearing a short red jumpsuit that always turned me on instantly. To her surprise, I didn't react. Seeing my ambiguous reaction, she cried and ran to her room, slamming the door behind her. I, on the other hand, laughed and went back to reading my book. I persuaded Steve to come to the meeting the following Wednesday. Finally, the day arrived, and we met in the living room. Steve was confused, and if he noticed that the photo was not hanging above the fireplace, he did not mention it. Being a good host, I showed them to their seats and offered them coffee. There was no reason to be rude. We were interrupted by a knock at the door. I opened the door to my lawyer. Larry told me not to talk to them alone. I decided to follow his advice. I introduced everyone and explained that Larry had come to observe our meeting and make sure I didn't beat Steve up. We sat there staring at each other for about 30 seconds before Steve said, "Mac, brother, I'm so sorry, I know how it looked. But I want you to know that was the only time anything like that ever happened. Jean loves you. I love you. You're like a brother to me." I raised my hand. "How many times have you slept with Tom's wife, Steve?" I asked. Steve frowned. "What?" "You said I was like your brother. The only brother I know is Tom. I just wanted to know how many times you slept with Liz." "Never," Steve muttered. "So I'm not like your brother, right?" I leaned over and picked up the cricket bat. Steve flinched. "So use what little sense you have left while you're here. If I don't ask, shut the hell up." Jin wanted to say something. I cut her off with a look. "Let's get something straight first. Some men would like to know when it started. Some want to know why it started, how long it lasted, where it led. I've thought about it a lot, and you know what? I don't care. I don't care if it started 10 years ago, 13 years ago, or on my wedding day. Little Zach is proof of how far it went. I don't care if it started because of an accident, a momentary lapse, my absence at a critical moment in our marriage, or simply because of infidelity. All the facts point to the fact that, while it didn't lead to marriage, if I hadn't come home unexpectedly one day, 15 years later, it definitely wouldn't have ended." I tapped the floor with the bat to emphasize my words. I paused to let my words sink in. Jean wrapped her arms around herself. Steve tried to sink into the couch. I continued. You hurt me so badly that I can't understand it. You made me do something I didn't think I was capable of just a few days ago. You made me hate two people I loved more than anything in the world. I turned to Steve. We were like brothers, as you said yourself, for over 25 years. We went to school, college, and university together. No one was happier than me when you made it to the big leagues. And when you had to leave, I cried with you. And to show your gratitude, you slept with my wife, got her pregnant, and didn't tell me. You ruined your marriage because of your affair with Jean. He looked up. Where did you hear that? He hissed. I nodded, confirming his fears. Oh yes, I spoke to Diana. She told me enough for me to figure out the rest if I wanted to. But that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about cold, deliberate betrayal. Betrayal of friendship, betrayal of your vows, and betrayal of the promise you made to me once. Remember? Steve looked at me in confusion. What promise? The one you made on my wedding day, when you promised to remember whose wife Jean was. I could hear Jean sobbing beside me. I ignored her. I bent down, took a folded piece of paper out of my pocket, and threw it at Steve. He picked it up and unfolded it. What's this? He asked. A paternity test, I explained. What? Are you out of your mind? He stammered. Steve, I know about Zachary. I know you consider him your son, at least biologically. Well, we'll do a DNA test and find out for sure. If he turns out to be yours, then you and my devoted wife will tell Zachary, I said. As if on cue, they both jumped to their feet. Jean spoke first. Mac, what are you thinking? We can't tell that little boy. He won't understand. Think of the damage you could cause, she whispered, gasping for breath. On the contrary, think of the damage we could do by not telling him, I replied. I turned to Steve. If what I heard last night is any indication, you've been pulling it out and waving it around whenever it suited you. But that's in the past. There's no designated hitman here. It's time to act. Steve looked sad. Why, Mac? Why drag Zach into this? Yeah, what good will it do you to ruin Zach's life? Jean joined the conversation. You'll save Zach's life, Jean. I didn't start this. I definitely didn't want this. But I'm going to end it. He'll be told everything, and you two will do it. Let's not forget that you two got him into this when you forgot a few things. Like the fact that you were my wife and my best friend. Zach needs to live a life that isn't built on lies. Steve, there are good reasons for this, and your own life plays a big part in it. Why did you quit baseball? I asked. Steve looked uncomfortable. Medical reasons, you know. What medical reasons? Never mind, I'll tell him myself. High blood pressure and neurological disorders. But Diana told me something else. You were diagnosed with early-stage multiple sclerosis, weren't you, Steve? Steve was stunned. For the first time, I can honestly say he was completely speechless. I relished it. I searched in vain for a way to prolong the feeling, to keep it fresh. Finally, he asked, Diana told you? Yes. Isn't high blood pressure hereditary, Steve? Yes, it is, he replied, embarrassed. Jean stood up. You bastard! You knew and didn't say anything? I stood between her and Steve, more to prevent her from following my example and doing something stupid. You knew, she said to me. Is multiple sclerosis hereditary too? I shrugged. I don't know. We'll have to find out. In any case, it doesn't matter, Jean, but it explains why Zach needs to know if Steve is his biological father. I looked him in the eyes, staring intently. Shared genetic material doesn't make you his father, Steve. I'm his father. When he had measles, I stayed up all night nursing him. When he was afraid of monsters in the closet, I chased them away. Parenting skills aren't inherited. I took out a second sheet of paper and handed out copies to everyone. This letter is from the lab that did the DNA tests on the children and me. Yes, I had all 3 children tested. It says that I am the father of Stephen and Rachel, and that Zachary is their brother. However, I am not Zachary's biological father. Unless my promiscuous wife slept with someone other than you, you bastard, I'm sure the DNA test results will prove that you are Zach's donor. We also got tested for all STDs and HIV. So far, the results are negative. I took out another piece of paper and handed it to him. This is a restraining order. It forbids you from coming within 100 meters of me, my children, or my home. If you do, I'll have you thrown in jail. Actually, it protects you too, because if I see you too soon after you leave here, I don't know what I'll do. Steve stared at the paper in his hand as if it were a snake ready to strike. I looked at my watch. It takes effect in 5 minutes, so if you have anything to say it quickly. When we get the test results, we'll decide when and how to tell Zach. As far as I'm concerned, you're dead to me. I don't want to see you, hear you, or talk to you ever again. Do you understand? This time he showed wisdom. He walked to the door to open it. As he passed me, I whispered his name softly. He turned toward me, unaware of what I was about to do. My fist flew up and described a narrow arc. His head snapped back, and he fell to the floor with a loud thud. His eyes clouded over, and he shook his head. I stood over that bastard, rubbing my knuckles. His vision cleared, and he struggled to his feet. He looked at me again with genuine sadness in his eyes. I heard a quiet, "I'm sorry," and he left. He walked out of my house for the last time, leaving Jean and me alone with our demons. Jean got up, went to the kitchen, and poured herself a cup of coffee. "Want some?" she asked. I shook my head, and she returned to the living room and sat down on the small sofa. She took a sip of coffee and looked around the room as if she were seeing it for the last time. Good. I wanted her to realize the seriousness of her actions. I went to the kitchen, took a glass out of the cupboard, filled it halfway with Jack Daniels, and dropped in 2 ice cubes. Feeling stronger, I returned to the living room. Jean didn't take her eyes off me. I took a small sip. "Jean, our marriage is over and I want a divorce." She opened her mouth, closed her eyes, and began to cry. Then I continued. "Jean, I want to know one thing." "Why, Jean?" "No psychological babble, no excuses, just why? Why did you do it? Why with Steve?" She sat there thinking, then looked up. "Because I could," she said simply. Then she continued. "That time you missed our anniversary, when the 3 of us were supposed to go out. I was angry. Steve was here that night, and we went out to dinner together. Steve was always here. He was like family. Well, we had a few drinks. He started hitting on me. I was drunk and angry enough to go for it. The sex was amazing." I raised my hand to stop her. "I didn't ask you to tell me all the details. I want to know why." She took a sip of coffee. "There has to be a reason, Mac. Sometimes people do things just because. I know I did the wrong thing. I'm sorry I hurt you. I spent many hours in the hospital believing that, and the only reason I can think of is that I liked it. He was here so often that it was almost like having 2 husbands. After a while, I started to feel the same way, only it was even better. He was here when I wanted him, and the rest of the time he was gone. I never loved him. I liked that there was a break in our sex life every few months. You were always a good lover. I never complained, but sometimes I wanted someone else. Steve was always there. It was just sex. You never missed him. He was never important to me." I nodded. "I can partly understand that. To be honest, most people do what they can. Thanks for your honesty. Why did it have to be him, my best friend? Couldn't you have come up with some excuse and spent the night with someone else? Why did you let it go on for over 10 years? Like I said, he was available and really wanted it. By keeping it, so to speak, in the family, I didn't feel like a slut or someone who was really cheating on you. You never wanted another woman, Mac? Just one night of sex with someone else? Nothing serious, just one night with someone else?" "Of course. Most people do. I never crossed the line, and I don't have children with another woman," I reminded her. She grimaced. So what do we do now? I love you. I love you with all my heart. I don't want a divorce. What does marriage mean to you, Jean? I asked. The question caught her off guard. She froze for a moment, hoping I hadn't heard her last words. Well, I believed it was a commitment between two people who loved each other, a promise to always be faithful and support each other. Her voice trailed off on the last words as she realized the seriousness of what she had just said. I smiled. Yes. But where was I in all of that? Where were the children? Where was everything we had worked so hard to build? Let me tell you what marriage means to me. It's a union of two lives. You said that with Steve it was just sex. Maybe that's true for you. But the sexual union is part of that union. When you try to separate the two, you can't avoid it, and it only weakens the union. Marriage is like a body made up of many parts: trust, love, honor, sex, and respect. When you separate any of those parts, you separate all the parts of the marriage. When you have sex with someone other than your spouse, you cannot be trusted, you do not respect or value your spouse, and you certainly do not love them. How could you believe that you could have sex without destroying your marriage? Tears filled Jean's eyes again. Mac, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was stupid. I love you. I'll do anything to save our marriage. Just tell me what to do. I stared at her. Honestly, I believe you believed you loved me. But you couldn't do this and truly love me. If it had been a one-night stand, maybe, just maybe, I could have gotten over it. But it was an affair that lasted for years and resulted in the birth of a child. But I didn't love him, Mac. You don't understand. He's my friend, yes. But I never loved him the way I love you, she argued. I shook my head. He was just a sexual partner, right? That only makes it worse. If you could sleep with Steve without any problems, what makes you or me believe you won't find someone else? For you, it was just sex. True love is 100% commitment to your spouse, not lies and cheating. As a lawyer, I expected you to understand the commitment you made on our wedding day. You make me sick. You had fun and didn't even think about my feelings or the children. I just don't know you anymore, Jean. What do you want me to do, Mac? What can I say? Jean was beginning to realize that things might not turn out the way she wanted them to, and that the consequences of her affair might be more serious than she had believed. I was surprised she couldn't understand why I was so upset. She really believed there was a difference between what she did with Steve and what she did with me. She couldn't see it in the bigger picture. Jean, I'll try to get through to you one more time and then it's over. Okay, she replied quietly and sadly. Jean, when you did that, you broke our marriage contract. You betrayed me and our family. I can't say it any clearer than that. I can't trust you. Just a few days ago, I believed we had a very strong marriage. Now I know that you've been lying to me for over 10 years. Now I know that while I was telling you about my next trip, you were planning your next sex session with Steve. You say you love me and slept with Steve because you could. That tells me that you valued sex with Steve more than our marriage. Every time I look at you, I see you sleeping with Steve in our bed. But I didn't love him, Mac. Don't you understand? I love you, she whispered. I couldn't believe what I was hearing from this bitch. I sighed and said, let's try to figure out how you understand love. First, you decided it was okay to sleep with Steve on our anniversary because you were upset that I was going on a business trip. The sex was great, so you kept sleeping with him. You have a child with him, but you didn't stop. Diane divorced Steve because of your affair, and you still didn't stop sleeping with him. You continued sleeping with Steve for over 10 years while I was on business trips. What's worse, you didn't take time off to be with me, the husband you love, but instead planned time to sleep with Steve, your lover. You call that love? I call it abuse. I can live without that kind of love, I shouted. Gathering my strength, I said, what you and Steve have done to me and our family. It turns out that most of our friends knew about you and that jerk, and I and the kids were kept in the dark. I'll find new friends, because none of our friends told me you were a lying, cheating bitch. You and your lover slept in our marriage bed while our children slept in their beds at the end of the hall. You make me sick. Who are you? You're a lying, cheating bitch. That stupid bitch asked again, "What do you want me to do, Mac? What can I say or do to save our marriage? I don't want to lose you." I gave her the most threatening look and said, "There's nothing you can do to save our marriage, but you better find a way to save your relationship with the kids. The kids and I have had a serious talk about you." She collapsed on the floor in a fetal position when I told her that Stephen wanted to be called Trevor. He also wanted to know how to legally change his name. He had told his teachers, grandparents, and friends that his name was now Trevor. She looked stunned. She stood up and said she wouldn't divorce me and wanted us to continue living as a family. I stood up, laughed in her face, and said, "There's no way in hell I'm going to continue living in a marriage with a lying, cheating bitch." This led to a very unpleasant argument between us, which got us nowhere. It ended with me telling her to shut up and listen. I told her that we were getting divorced, amicably or not, but we were getting divorced. I told her that I would give her 2 options and she could choose one. Then I told her about meeting with the kids. I told them that I was going to convert the basement into an apartment for their mother so they could see her whenever they wanted. They didn't like that idea at all. They were sad, angry, and embarrassed that their friends knew everything about their mother. They wanted to move. I am very proud of my children, including Zach. They wanted to stay with me, so we decided to move to a new house and start over. Jean really cried when she heard that the children wanted to move with me. I rented a 4-bedroom house in a different school district. When the kids found out what was really going on and their friends found out about your affair, we decided we needed to start over where no one knew us. The movers are coming tomorrow morning to take their things to the new house. You can leave the bed where I found you with Steve. Jean got angry and told me not to talk about her and Steve. I replied that I could talk to her about it if I wanted to. Now she could sleep with whomever she wanted without fear of being caught by her husband. A few minutes later, when everyone had calmed down, I offered Jean a few options. We would split everything in half, I would take the children, and the reason for the divorce would be irreconcilable differences. She would pay monthly for their college education. I told her I wouldn't take the children away from her, but they wouldn't sleep over or visit when she had men over. She would be responsible for the mortgage payments if she didn't want to sell the house, in which case the proceeds would be split 50-50. She would also be responsible for her BMW. That was the easy option. Or we could go the hard route, which is what I wanted. If she wanted to fight, I would file for divorce on the grounds of her infidelity. I would fight for full custody of the children, and she would pay child support. "I have all the evidence I need," I reminded her. "I caught you red-handed. There's also a police report and hospital records to back up my allegations. Don't forget about Steve's ex-wife and our friends. I don't believe I'll have any problems getting custody of the children. I'll demand child support and fight for Zach. Neither you nor Steve will be deemed suitable candidates for parenthood by social services. The property will be divided 80-20 in my favor. The house will be sold, and you'll have 15 days to move out. Again, I won't stop you from seeing the kids, but they won't stay overnight or come over when there are men in the house." One of the conditions she hated was that she had to change her last name back to her maiden name, Simmons. I didn't want her to have the same last name as my kids. I know it was childish, but I didn't care. Larry and I went to the local pub for a drink, leaving Jean alone. I wanted her to think carefully about what she had lost and what she might lose. For several weeks, that jerk tried to call me and make amends. I didn't talk to him. I reported his calls to the police. Finally, he got the message. It's been 4 years now, and Jean has taken the easy way out. We sold the house, and Jean moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. When she sees me, she still says how sorry she is for everything that happened. I still don't believe she understands the pain she caused me and the children. The kids and I are still in therapy. We are moving on. Trevor is 17 and a senior in high school. He has been accepted to the University of Virginia and is looking forward to starting college. Rachel is 15 and a senior in high school. She is ready to start dating, not to mention getting her driver's license. Zach is a 14-year-old freshman in high school who is very involved in sports. DNA test results confirmed that Steve is Zach's biological father. Steve and Jean talked to Zach. The conversation went very badly for both of them. Zach told Steve that he didn't want to see him anymore, that I was his father and always would be. Larry arranged with Steve for me to adopt Zach, and he is looking forward to his sophomore year of high school. The children have reconnected with their mother. She attends all of their school and community events. When the children want to visit their mother, they get in Trevor's car and drive to her house. They usually visit her twice a week. I started dating about 6 months after my divorce and couldn't believe how many women were interested in me. I guess word got around that I respected my marriage vows and was a faithful husband. My kids and friends keep setting me up, so maybe I'll find someone. When I do find her, you can be sure we'll discuss what marriage means to each of us. Right now, raising 3 teenagers is a full-time job. I was told that Jean and Steve broke up after we met. I guess it was fun and exciting to have sex behind my back. The press found out about the restraining order against Steve, and for weeks he and Jean were ridiculed in the newspapers. A former famous baseball player and federal government lawyer caught in bed by her husband breaking up a 15-year marriage. What a great story. I don't know anything about her personal life, and I don't want to know.